Imagine a lover so patient that he turned time into a prison. The movie name is The Secret in Their Eyes. The movie opens with Prosecutor Benjamin recalling a memory. He was at a train station, saying goodbye to a woman. As he boarded the train with his luggage, he looked back at her one last time. As the train started moving, the woman ran after it, but soon the train picked up speed, leaving her behind. Now older, Benjamin is writing about this moment in a notebook. Frustrated, he rips the page and starts again. He decides to begin with a case from 1974, on the morning of June 21st. That was the last morning a woman, who was later raped and murdered, spent with her husband. They were happy and laughing, unaware of the tragedy ahead. Benjamin sighs and tears up the page again. Struggling to find the right words, he decides to continue another day. Benjamin, now retired as a federal justice agent, wants to put his experiences into words. The next morning, he visits his old workplace and meets his former boss, Irene. Irene is surprised that he plans to write a novel. Benjamin explains that writing about this haunting case helps him process it. She goes to her bookshelf, finds an old typewriter, and hands it to him. She advises him to start from the beginning and stop overthinking. For Benjamin, the real beginning was Irene. He remembers the first time he met her. A beautiful woman in a red dress who was about to become his new boss. He couldn't help but stare as she greeted him warmly. Behind him was his partner, whom she also greeted. Soon after their introductions, they were assigned a rape and murder case. At first, Benjamin tried to pass it to another team, but it was his turn, and he had no choice. Accepting his duty, he went to the crime scene, where he met the inspector. What he saw left him speechless. The victim was so young, and the brutal nature of her death deeply affected him. Benjamin and the inspector then visited the victim's husband, Ricardo, a bank clerk. Shocked by the news, Ricardo gave short answers to their questions. Benjamin mentioned that neighbors said Ricardo had a habit of going home at lunchtime. Ricardo explained that he and his wife liked a noontime TV show, so he always went home to watch it with her. The next day, Benjamin's team learned that 2 construction workers had been arrested for the crime. He rushed to the police station to question them. The police told him they had already confessed, but when Benjamin looked closely, he realized they had been tortured into confessing. Enraged, he stormed back to his office and confronted his colleague, Romano, who ordered their arrest. Romano dismissed his concerns, saying they were just lowlifes, and no one cared about them. Their coworkers broke up the fight as Benjamin threatened to file a complaint and ruin Romano's career. Later, Benjamin found his partner drinking heavily at a local bar. Disappointed, he paid for his drink and took him home. However, his partner's wife refused to let him in, so Benjamin let him sleep at his own apartment. While his partner slept on the couch, Benjamin looked through old photos of the victim. That same night, he visited Ricardo to ask for more pictures of his late wife. He wanted to understand who she was in life. Ricardo told him she grew up in Chivilcoy, but moved to Buenos Aires to work as a teacher. While looking through stacks of photo albums, Ricardo told Benjamin that he didn't want the murderer to be executed. Instead, he believed the killer should suffer in prison for the rest of his life. As Benjamin flipped through the pictures, he noticed the same man appearing in many of them, always staring at the victim in an unsettling way. Ricardo identified him as the suspect, someone from Chivilcoy who had been a childhood friend of the victim. In the present, Benjamin explains to Irene that there was something about the suspect's eyes that stood out. His gaze was full of longing and obsession. Irene asks why he is revisiting this case after so many years. He replies that for 20 years, he was too busy with life, but now that he's retired, he has nothing left to do except face the ghosts of his past. Back in the past, Ricardo called the suspect's home in Chivilcoy. His mother answered and told him that her son had moved to Buenos Aires over a month ago. When Ricardo asked if her son knew the victim, she revealed that they were childhood sweethearts and that he never got over her leaving. Benjamin tried to track the suspect down, but he had already disappeared from his job and the hostel where he was staying. Unable to get a search warrant for the suspect's mother's house, Benjamin and his partner decided to break in to look for evidence. Searching through magazines and cabinets, Benjamin finally found a stack of letters the suspect had sent to his mother. Some were recent, but none contained any confessions. He read them over and over, hoping for a clue about the suspect's whereabouts, but the letters only talked about random, everyday topics. Unfortunately, the judge found out that Benjamin and his partner had been seen in Chivilcoy. Worse, his partner had been spotted drinking straight from a bottle at a local store. Furious and embarrassed, Irene scolded them for being reckless. Still, she defended them and asked the judge not to punish them, but as a result, the case was officially closed. Back in the present, Benjamin and Irene look at photos from her engagement party, reminiscing. Benjamin points out that she got engaged just a few weeks after the case was closed. She shows him a group photo, where he looks serious, not realizing that he was actually staring at her longingly. She tells him she's glad he's writing about the past, but reminds him that she needs to move forward. Then she stands up, kisses him on the forehead, and says goodbye. Benjamin remembers running into Ricardo at a train station a year after the murder. Ricardo had been going from station to station, hoping to spot the suspect. He also tearfully admitted that he was starting to forget little details about his wife, no matter how hard he tried to remember. Moved by Ricardo's devotion, Benjamin and his partner convinced Irene to reopen the case. She reluctantly agreed. Meanwhile, his partner finally figured out that the names in the suspect's letters were actually football players from his favorite team. Using this clue, Benjamin and his partner went to a game, hoping to find the suspect. They spotted him in the crowd and gave chase. The suspect tried to run, but was caught by stadium security. They arrested him and held him for 3 days. On the day of his interrogation, the judge and Benjamin's partner hadn't arrived yet. Benjamin wanted to proceed anyway, but Irene insisted they follow the proper procedure. Ignoring her, Benjamin began the questioning. The suspect admitted knowing the victim but denied killing her. When Irene walked in, she caught him staring at her chest. In response, she took control of the interrogation, mocking his masculinity. She claimed there was no way he could be the killer because he wasn't strong enough. Enraged, the suspect slapped her and, in his anger, confessed that he had raped and murdered the victim. Furious, Benjamin attacked him, threatening to kill him for hurting Irene. Back in the present, Irene calls Benjamin, saying she has changed her mind and now wants to read his novel when it's finished. But the case never had a satisfying ending. Despite being convicted, the suspect was freed by Romano as revenge against Benjamin. He was even given a job in the new president's security team. Benjamin and Irene confronted Romano, but there was nothing they could do. Later, in an elevator, the suspect casually walked in and silently showed them a gun, a quiet but clear threat. Benjamin regretfully told Ricardo that the murderer had been freed. Heartbroken, Ricardo insisted that the man deserved to be in prison forever. One night, Benjamin's partner got drunk and got into a bar fight. Benjamin helped him home, then went to fetch his wife. She was furious, saying it was the last time she would go to his apartment to pick him up. When they arrived, they found the apartment door broken. Inside, all of Benjamin's pictures had been turned face down. Then he saw his partner's lifeless body lying on the bed. Fearing for Benjamin's safety, Irene arranged for him to leave town and stay with her cousins. He didn't want to leave her, but she insisted. At the train station, just like in the memory from the beginning, they shared a longing moment, almost kissing. It took everything in him to leave, and he couldn't stop looking at her as the train pulled away. In the present, Irene finishes reading his novel and is surprised by the deep emotion in the final scene. With tears in her eyes, Irene asks Benjamin why he didn't take her with him all those years ago. He stays silent. Trying to lighten the mood, she asks how the next 10 years were for him. He jokingly says he spent them counting llamas in a remote province. When he finally returned to Buenos Aires, she was already married with 2 kids. Irene reminds him that he also got married to a rich girl. Benjamin admits that he never loved anyone but her, which is why his marriage didn't last. He says he doesn't want to live an empty life anymore. This time, Irene is the one who doesn't respond. The next day, they look up the addresses of the suspect and Ricardo. There is no record of the suspect's whereabouts since 1975, but they manage to find Ricardo's address. Benjamin travels to a remote mountain area where Ricardo now lives alone. Their reunion is a little awkward, but they're happy to see each other. Ricardo explains that he wanted a fresh start, so he transferred to another bank branch. He never remarried, and Benjamin notices that he still keeps photos of his late wife on display. Benjamin asks how he managed to move on, especially knowing that the murderer was never truly punished. Ricardo says that time has healed his wounds, but Benjamin doesn't believe him. Benjamin then shares what happened to his partner, how he was likely killed by goons sent by Romano as revenge. That night, when the attackers arrived at Benjamin's apartment, his partner pretended to be him in order to save his life. That's why all of Benjamin's photos were turned face down. Finally, Ricardo confesses. He waited for the suspect one night, kidnapped him, and shot him. Satisfied with this answer, Benjamin leaves. But as he drives away, he remembers what Ricardo once told him, that the killer deserved to rot in his cell for life. The more he thinks about it, the less he believes Ricardo actually killed the suspect. He stops the car and walks back to Ricardo's house. Hiding in the trees, he watches as Ricardo enters another room. Following quietly, Benjamin sees him feeding the suspect, who has been locked in a hidden cell for the past 20 years. Benjamin was right. Ricardo never let go of his obsession, and in his own way, he delivered justice. Without a word, Benjamin turns and walks away. After returning to Buenos Aires, he visits his partner's grave to pay his respects. Then he goes to Irene's office. He tells her there's something he needs to say. The movie ends with them smiling at each other, both knowing they finally have a chance at love. Thanks for watching.